أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنما المؤمنون إخوة فأصلحوا بين أخويكم واتقوا الله لعلكم ترحمون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم ولا نساء من نساء عسى أن يكن خيرا منهن ولا تلمزوا أنفسكم ولا تنابزوا بالألقاب بئس الاسم الفسوق بعد الإيمان ومن لم يتب فأولئك هم الظالمون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم ولا تجسسوا ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا أيحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم أخيه ميتا فكرهتموه واتقوا الله إن الله تواب رحيم. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا ولما يدخل الإيمان في قلوبكم وإن تطيعوا الله ورسوله لا يلدكم من أعمالكم شيئا إن الله غفور رحيم. إنما المؤمنون الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله ثم لم يرتابوا وجاهدوا بأموالهم وأنفسهم في سبيل الله أولئك هم الصادقون. قل أتعلمون الله بدينكم والله يعلم ما في السماوات وما في الأرض والله بكل شيء عليم. يمنون عليك أن أسلموا قل لا تمنوا علي إسلامكم بل الله يمن عليكم أن هداكم للإيمان إن كنتم صادقين. إن الله يعلم غيب السماوات والأرض والله بصير بما تعملون. So this is a chapter in the Quran that's well known for its emphasis on character, and also in the later part of the chapter, which I read, also talks about some aspects of maintaining spirituality and faith. So. Believers, let not some men among you ridicule others. It may be that the latter are better than the former. Nor should some women laugh at others. It may be that the latter are better than the former. Do not defame or be sarcastic to each other, or call each other by offensive nicknames. How bad it is to earn an evil reputation after accepting the faith. Those who do not repent are evildoers. Believers, avoid much suspicion. Indeed, some suspicion is a sin, and do not spy on one another, and do not backbite. Would any of you like to eat his dead brother's flesh? No, you would hate it. Fear God. God is ever forgiving and most merciful. Mankind, we have created you from a male and female, and made you into peoples and tribes, so that you might come to know each other. The noblest of you in God's sight is the one who fears God most. God is all-knowing and all-aware. The Arabs of the desert say, "We have believed." Say to them, "You have not believed yet." Say rather, "We have submitted," for faith has not yet entered into your hearts. But if you will obey God and His messenger, He will not detract anything from your good deeds. God is most forgiving and ever merciful. The believers are only those who have faith in God and His messenger, and then doubt not, but strive hard with their wealth and their persons for the cause of God. Such are the truthful ones. Say, do you presume to teach God your religion, when God knows everything in the heavens and earth? God has knowledge of all things. They think they have done you a favor by becoming Muslims. Say, do not consider your Islam a favor to me. No, indeed, it is God who bestowed a favor on you by guiding you to the true faith. Admit this if you are telling the truth. God knows the unseen things of the heavens and the earth, and God sees all that you do. Thank you.
So, I'm going to read the beginning prayer that we'll be reciting in 2 hours at this point, that we say Friday afternoon, evening, as part of the service that brings in the Sabbath, the rest. I'm going to read about half of it, or I'm going to sing about half of it, and then I'm going to explain some of the text. So it's Yedi nefesh avarach aman meshov amdach eretzonach yarutz avdach kmo aya yishtachaveh mu'adach yerav lo yedidutach bino vetzuv v'chotam Adonai zivaram nafshi cholat avatach anayelna refana beharot la no anzirach az titchazek v'tidrapeh v'haitalach shifat olam. So this is part of the really beautiful poetry that we say, as I mentioned, on Friday afternoons, that is about sort of about two things. On the one hand, it's about talking about being in relationship with God, and I'll give some translations to point that out. But there's this other part of it which is sort of that it comes at a time when you're just at the end of your week, you've been dealing with like your personal mundane stuff all the time, and it comes at a time when you're ready to relax and be in this sort of personal business of being in relationship with God. So a little bit about that. So the text goes, soulmate, merciful one. There's a line that's a little hard to translate, but it roughly means like allow me to relax is a good translation, barring spending 10 minutes explaining why I chose that translation. I will run after you and bow to you because I am hungry for because I am hungry for my partner and nothing else will satisfy me. Beautiful one, illuminate the world, for my soul is sick with love love for you, please heal it by showing me something, your face, it's translated here, it's not a great translation, by showing me your presence. Then I will be strengthened and healed, and I will be an eternal outpouring to you. I think the language here is really about the sort of the desire and the need to be in relationship, personal and communal, with the divine, which I think is really beautiful.
Alright, so I'm going to read 3 small slokas or prayers from the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the, Professor Hatcher can correct me on this, but one of the more pre-modern Hindu texts following the Vedas. So it's kind of one, I would say, one of the more synthetic works that kind of brings together a lot of what we consider modern Hinduism, synthesizing parts of the Vedas and kind of making them more people-friendly in a sense, kind of trying to make it seem that religion is something that everybody can have and everybody can participate in by following 3 or 4 distinct, paths. And so basically, a quick little preview as to what I'm going to talk about. The Bhagavad Gita talks about 3 main yogas. So the term yoga actually is kind of a path to the divine, and it talks about 3 main ones: bhakti, jnana, and karma. And basically, bhakti yoga has to do with devotion, completely devoting all of the aspects of your life to God and singing the praises of God. In this case, Lord Krishna. Jnana yoga is knowledge, so having the wisdom that what is this earth is not real, and that the ultimate reality is beyond that. And then the third one is karma yoga, which is kind of where I'm going to be focusing on, and that is how the 3 verses I'm going to read today are bhakti and karma. So karma yoga is about doing work or doing your job, doing your duty, but surrendering all fruits of that duty to God. And so the 3 slokas that I will recite will convey that. So just like the previous 2 speakers have done, I'll read the Sanskrit and then I'll read the English as well. Karmanyevadhikarasya ma phalechu kadachana ma karma phalaha heturpur ma te sangosta karmani. So this one basically says that having acquired the state of a warrior, you are now eligible to act in whatever way the stature of a warrior demands out of you. But you are not entitled to any benefits resulting from your actions. At the same time, you cannot be at a state of inertia. You should act according to your stature without any hopes of enjoying the fruits of your actions. So this basically exactly what it says, and it's this sort of idea of doing work but devoting all aspects of the work to a higher power kind of came in response to the Shramana or ascetic movements that were coming about during this time period, where people were just giving everything up. So things like Buddhism would just involve, a religion like Buddhism would just involve giving up all aspects of life and completely renouncing all earthly possessions so that you could attain a higher being. This Bhagavad Gita kind of goes off that, but kind of says that you can do work, you can commit action or karma, but you must not take any ownership of that action. You must realize that everything that you're doing is because you're just a puppet in the hands of a higher power. This is the second one. Yada yada hi dharmasya vimanya bhavati bharata abhyuttana dharmasya tadatmanam shajamyaham. So this one basically talks, is Krishna addressing the Prince Arjuna, and basically he says that, oh descendant of Bharata, so Bharata is supposed to be the descendant of all of India, and Arjuna is considered a descendant of Bharata. Whenever there is a decline in dharma, or justice, or religion, and an abundance of unrighteousness, I take form. And basically that's just saying, Krishna is saying to Arjuna that he's taking form in this time of war, and every time, basically, this goes back to the idea of Vishnu, the ultimate God, taking forms at different yugas or millennia, where whenever there's some sort of imbalance in the world, God takes shape and tries to correct that. And in this case, that's what he's doing. And the reason I picked this particular one is because it goes to show that within Arjuna, there's this imbalance of whether, he's faced, for many of you who don't necessarily know what Mahabharata or the story is about. It's about this Prince Arjuna who has a moral dilemma as to whether or not he's supposed to, he's a prince and he's fighting against his cousins. And he has this moral dilemma as to whether he actually wants to kill them or not. And this is kind of, goes to show both that Krishna is coming both to correct the dispute between the 2 groups of cousins, and and also to correct this moral ambiguity that Krishna has about doing his duty versus not doing his duty, doing what he thinks is right, but what actually is right. And so with that, I'll just recite the last one. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chatushkritam dharma samsthapanatharya sambhavami yuge yuge. And this one basically says that I appear every millennium to protect the virtuous and pious, to annihilate evildoers, and to establish my dharma. And just it is going off the previous sloka, basically saying that Krishna is here every time there's something wrong, and will basically annihilate all those who are not respecting him as the ultimate power. We're focused on all earthly possession and think that what is on earth is their life, when they must realize that there's something beyond all of this, and that what they're living is just an illusion of Maya. So basically, I picked these three because Krishna is, it's a very kind of telling work about Hindu religion, and how I think the Bhagavad Gita, as it stands, is a very marked text, because it marks the Vedic period and then the period after that, and just how many of the ideas of this ultimate reality kind of changed after this point. The fact that Krishna is presenting three different yogas, karma, bhakti, and jnana, shows that beyond, it's kind of almost indicative of what's coming after with this multiplicity of Hinduism. And just it goes to show how there's different ways you can attain God and different ways you can respect that God. And I think that's why this is one of the texts that's so beautiful, because it's indicative of how I practice my religion by worshipping a variety of gods and kind of seeing them as a form of one ultimate reality, and how you can still carry out your duty as long as you realize that there's some force behind what you're doing at all times. Thank you.
So thank you guys all so much for that, for sharing. We're going to move into our panel. I'm just going to give quick intros for all our panelists who are here about an intimate setting. So if people want to move up, if you guys want to move up, feel free to do that. But just in case you didn't already know who's here, we have Professor Jennifer Io, who's professor of the religion department, and who received her PhD in early Christianity from Brown University in 2012. And her research investigates the various divinatory practices of the Apostle Paul, and situates him in a larger milieu of the religious specialists of the early Roman Empire. And also she wrote some translation theory and New Testament studies, gender and sexuality and antiquity, the theory of religion, and beliefs and practices pertaining to life after death. Thank you so much, Professor Al, for being with us today. Next we have Professor Hatcher, who's interesting, and you guys can move in a minute if I'm sit up here. But Professor Hatcher's interests in research include the expression of religious change among emergent Hindu movements in colonial and contemporary South Asia, the transformation of intellectual and social life in colonial Bengal, and the interrogation of modernity under the conditions of colonialism. And he's currently conducting research on the networking and emplacement of Shiva shrines in Western Bengal from the 18th to 20th century, and on the discourse of reform as it is shaped both colonial attitudes and contemporary scholarship on modern Hinduism. So thank you for being with us too. And Rabbi Jeffrey Summit, who is a professor in the Department of Music and Judaic Studies, as well as the executive director of the Tufts Hillel. Rabbi Summit has done a lot of work with the Abayudaya Jews in Uganda, focusing on musical Jewish tradition and the expression of Jewish identity thereof, and a resulting CD was nominated for a Grammy Award. His research and writing focus on music and identity, music and spiritual experience, music and advocacy, and the impact of technology on the transmission of tradition. So if you all are in class, feel free to come on up. We have a couple of questions for all of you, but maybe to start off, if you
Yeah, we should move. And we should encourage people to move up to the platform.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't have to be super spread out.
So nice to meet you. I know you were in the Yeah, really.
So we'd love if you guys maybe wanted to go down with the line and give instructions on how you see these two ideas as fitting together, or how they play a role in your own academic study. Then we have other specific can go into, and start on this side.
So could I just ask about, Miriam, just clarification? I sort of like prepared a thing, you
Yeah.
know, like, but do you want us to answer questions or do the different things we presented?
But maybe we can do both. We can do like present, and then go
I'm
into
kind of in the
questions.
same boat.
Yeah.
Being a professor, I couldn't resist a handout.
Right.
Right.
That's great.
Almost for clarification, right, and discussion, but we can have open-ended discussion.
Yeah, so why don't we start with,
Can we do one thing first, not to interrupt, but can you guys introduce all of yourselves? So we might kind of.
yeah, I can start. I'm Miriam. I'm a senior. I'm an international relations and Middle Eastern studies major. From Washington, DC.
And if I could add to your question, just in a phrase or a sentence, what you're especially interested in connected to these issues of text and translation and spirituality, like what does it make a difference to you?
Yeah, okay. I think what's particularly compelling to me is, like, as someone who likes to study languages, how do languages that give us access to religion and to religious practice, and like how does, especially I'm Jewish, so like growing up Jewish and having to learn Hebrew, like what sort of how does that language connect to my religious identity?
I'm Daniel, I'm a junior, I have some majors that don't really matter to this discussion. But, no, sorry. One thing that really fascinates me is the ongoing work of translation and retranslation, and how that has to do with evolving understandings within different religions.
I'm Alice. I'm a freshman. I'm considering a double major in religion and computer science.
Tufts Interfaith.
Am I liberal arts or am I liberal arts? I think that I grew up Christian, and so we read everything in English, and taking a Judaic studies class has really opened my eyes to reading a text in another language and reading more specifically a translation, really thinking of the Bible as not being in English, because it obviously was not originally written in English, and like the complications that come from that.
I'm Jane. I'm a sophomore, architectural studies major. And yeah, I'm part of the Interfaith Council with Miriam. And so I guess like part of what Alice was saying, I grew up Catholic, and so, but I like learned the religion in English basically, and so I hadn't really thought that much about learning in a different language, practice my faith. I hadn't really thought about it until I joined the Interfaith Council, and I just think like Miriam was saying, it's super interesting how language can kind of give people access to the world.
My name is Julia. I'm a junior and I'm studying Spanish. I was also raised Jewish. And I remember very distinctly having my bat mitzvah and having to sing in Hebrew and having no clue what I was saying. And I went to Hebrew school and thought of it more as just a time to hang out with my friends instead of actually learning the Hebrew language. And now, looking back, I really regret that. So I'm very interested in how does the fact that I don't know Hebrew affect my view on Judaism.
Simeon, junior, Daniel, my major, really matter. I'm also in the Interfaith Council, and I'm very interested in sort of the relation between different religious faiths, kind of how their stories and mythologies interplay together, and what the connections are. And I can read all those faiths and stories in English, and I'm curious to see how going back to the original text can sort of offer new meaning to certain stories that I'm interested in.
I'm Sid, I'm a freshman. I probably have majors that don't matter, but what I'm most interested about is being raised in Hindu and still being Hindu. The thing is, it's kind of one of those religions where a lot of the text or the measures are sort of kind of hidden, and how kind of language plays a role in the expression, and how something so plural, like how religious pluralism is placed by translations and retranslations of various texts, and how that can like kind of
change the way stories told over time.
I'm Gates. I'm a senior religion major. I just had a discussion in my contemporary Catholicism class, which you should all take if you have a chance when it comes back in 2 years. We're talking about the Irish Catholic Church dropping some excerpts from the lectionary and how big of a deal that was in the Catholic community. So when I saw the flyer, I was like, perfect. Right? But I've also been continually interested in language as a mode of controlling different cultures and how people, institutions, empires have used religion to codify and control populations. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for everyone who shared. It was great.
Can you define those terms you just used? Because I got lost in the sentence about the Irish Catholic Church.
Okay, so in 2000, there's 7 passages that the Irish Catholic Church deemed to be demeaning towards women, and so they proposed that priests should not say these excerpts from the Bible anymore in like Mass on Sunday, and I don't know what has happened since then, but some of the they were given like different options. Like one was like to not say it, the other was to say an abbreviated version, and like the last option was to say it but explain the cultural context from which it came, which I'm not sure how that worked out in practice. But so that's what.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Of course, sorry.
No.
No, it's good. Yeah. Very germane related to thinking about how communities adapt to their scriptures and if there's sacred texts, how much leeway do we have, right? So yeah, we can get back to that.
Hello, my name is Sam. I'm a sophomore studying computer science. Yeah, I'm also on Interfaith Council. I was really interested in some, and I don't know, I feel like it's been a really big part of my life, like religion, or at least the intersection between those. I'm just like, for all the second I spoke my first word and all put me like when I was in school. And yeah, I remember like being a kid and like talking to my parents like, learning here is like great and stuff, and great, but like I can't understand any of this. And like I think I'm Somali, so when I would go home, I speak Somali to my parents, and it's just like it's like a translation that I wasn't really getting. So I feel like the meaning of it wasn't too solidified in me, just because I wasn't too sure what anything meant other than memorizing it. But yeah, it's something that I feel like, especially like throughout being a teenager and like coming to college, like stuck out to me more and like reading it in English. And just like also thinking about like people said earlier, like accessibility of language is like who gets to practice religion, what you have to do first before you practice your religion. And for a lot of people, it's like learning a new language. So I just find it interesting.
There's so many corollaries to this to Jewish practice and the Jewish American experience.
So I want to say really quickly, this is like a thing that we do in cafe, the free orientation, and it means to like agree or affirm what someone's saying. So I'm gonna do it uncontrollably. So it sounds like this? Yeah, I feel like you're cold, but it's like a way to say like agree. It's like less disruptive, I guess, than snapping, and also I can't snap, so. So if you want to do that, you can, but also just like separate.
And speaking of majors that don't matter, I was a chemistry major, so you never know what matters and how it matters. And it mattered a lot to me, you know. So it's funny that, I know it's good, I'm just joking, but it's interesting. Religion is the only major that matters, obviously.
English literature, American studies, law school, like almost. If somebody told me in college I was going to be a rabbi, I wouldn't have known what to do with the information.
Yeah. So. Maybe y'all can introduce yourself. We just finished introduction.
Hi, my name is Ella.
what kind of drew you to this session? What interests you in the theme of language and prayer?
Jane told me about it, and I'm a religion major, so it's interesting.
And I'll share a line with you if you want to get a laugh in a group, and you walk in the your name's Ella.
Yeah.
You know, so you say, "Hi, I'm the late Ella." You know.
So there's so many themes. I don't know how should we proceed. I mean, there's a number of things we could just touch on, I suppose.
Yeah, so if you want to start with things that you prepared and then.
Start with what you prepared.
I'm going to start with what I didn't prepare, just and get to that maybe, because I think, first of all, I think the whole issue of translation in communities and people dealing with the idea that there's a tradition there that they may not feel like they have access to, and want to find that access through gaining training in the language or whatever that might be, the language of their sacred text. It's relevant to my work because I work on these Bengali Hindus in the 19th century who speak Bengali largely, vernacular language. They know there's an immense reservoir of Sanskrit literature that constitutes their tradition, but they don't have immediate access to it. And often that access is mediated through, as it would be in a lot of communities, Talmudic scholars, for instance, or pundits in the Sanskrit case, deeply learned people who can take you right down into so many weeds that you can't ever find your way out again. So trying to think about, can we translate that learning and that knowledge and that wisdom into modes that work for us in the 19th century in the conditions of British rule coming in and adding another language of English in there? And how do these traditions square up in the face of the English Christian, in this case Christian Protestantism largely? So this whole idea of revisiting the texts and learning the languages or looking at people who can translate those languages into Bengali has been a big part of what I've worked on. In particular, certain Sanskrit pundits who had the vision to say, I have this mastery, but I need to find a way to help my community understand how to make decisions about what's true and what isn't true in their tradition by rendering some of this stuff intelligible to them. So I think it's a kind of perennial, probably ubiquitous problem for communities, particularly when they move or when conditions change, right? So that's just one modality I saw in terms of hearing a lot of the comments. Come back to the translation issues. I know it's a big issue for you as well. Right? Yeah, so I'll come back to my handout. It's not more of the weeds.
Well, I'll just jump in and say, and when you shared your experience about learning Hebrew but not knowing Hebrew, I recently finished a book about the experience and the meaning of chanting sacred scripture, chanting Torah, why Jews chant Torah, and why this is stayed to be a core ritual in the tradition for 2,000 years. And the fact of the matter is, lots of people who do this ritual don't know what it says. You know, they memorized it. And so I did, I'm an ethnomusicologist, so I did hundreds of interviews about talking about the meaning connected to performing sacred text when you weren't necessarily connected to the meaning of the sacred text. And and the simple thing I would say is people learn more. You can learn biblical Hebrew or more Hebrew in 2 semesters of college than you did in all of Hebrew school. So it's just not that hard. So you could jump in and learn it. It's just the language. The reason for the performance of the text was so deeply connected to other values that were tremendously important, like community and authentic practice and family and tradition and stating who you are at a point in time in history and where you belong. And so sometimes you don't even need to go into the meaning of the text to get deep cultural and spiritual meaning in the performance of the text.
Yeah, that was fun to watch the presenters perform. And think of that difference when you shift to the explanatory role. You can see the ways we embody text too, right? You learn through the physicality. And you watch Brahmins learning the Sanskrit Vedas. It's a physical process. There are gestures of head movement, body posture, things like that. To get the text literally into their body. And meaning is not a part of the equation at all, because it's a performance, and that's a basic choice you live in. So that's a really interesting discussion around meaning. What do we do with the meaning of these things, quite apart from the performance of them?
And just one other thing I'd add, I don't want to jump in there, you know. But how do we know that? What you just said, right? It's like one way we know that is that lots of religious texts, you know, Genesis is great, you know, like great stories, Exodus, really good stuff.
Yeah.
You know, Leviticus, not so much, you know, and so, but people spend hours learning how to memorize and perform these obscure genealogies or rules of animal sacrifice. So something else has to be happening, or else people wouldn't get into it.
So some of the work that I do has to do with translation theory. And some of you mentioned translation as a way to gain access to your faith or religious ideas, but I would maybe look at that from a different perspective, and that is to say that translations create your religious ideas or bring into the world ideas that maybe aren't possible in the original language. And there are tons of examples of this, but I'm thinking so you're a Catholic. So the Catholic Church has a doctrine of original sin. But that doctrine is possible only because the person who formulates the idea is reading the translation of Paul's letters. So the New Testament is originally written in Greek. Augustine, his name is Augustine, he dies in 430. He knows Greek, but he doesn't know Greek that well, so when he's reading his religious texts, he's reading them in Latin. So when he reads Paul's letter to the Romans, and he gets to chapter 5, verse 12, I think what we would call a mistranslation. In that particular passage, Paul is talking about why human beings die and how death is the punishment for wrongdoing. In Greek, the word means because. Because all do wrong, all people die. But the translation switches the because into in quo, meaning in whom. He's talking about Adam at that point. So Augustine reads a text that says, Adam, in whom all have sinned, instead of because all have sinned. And he reads that to say, he's reading his translation correctly, but the translation is incorrect, right? To say that at the moment that Adam does wrong, all human beings, almost as if they are genetically contained in him because they descend from him, all human beings are born into a state of already having committed sin because they are descendants of Adam. That idea is only made possible through Augustine reading the translation from Greek into Latin. And that's a doctrine that becomes kind of a cornerstone in Catholic theology that is exported all over the world for centuries, right? But the Greek Orthodox Church does not have this doctrine. The Coptic Church does not have this doctrine. The Russian Orthodox Church, none of the Christian churches that derive from Greek have this doctrine. It's all of the Western Christianities. And it's made possible, it's brought into the world of the possibilities simply through the translation. So there are tons of examples of this, that there are lots of division between the Eastern Orthodox Christian churches and the Western Christian churches, and they have to do with language, translating the Greek text into Latin, and from Latin to Spanish to English. So translation does something and makes something possible in the world that actually isn't possible when you stick to the original. For better or worse, there are other examples. The current New Testaments that are widely used in college classrooms use gender-inclusive language, which I don't participate in a church, but I support that effort entirely. But the Greek doesn't actually say brothers and sisters. It just says brothers. But it's usually translated as brothers and sisters, and I applaud that effort to make the Christian community more inclusive. But it is a decision, right? It's something that is made possible by translating this authoritative text in a very particular kind of way.
Now we don't have to go there now, but let's flag gender as another issue.
Oh, yeah.
And also the issue of interpretation.
Right.
You know, because translation is interpretation, and those of us who are engaged in both the scholarship of religion and also the practice of religion, and I don't speak for you guys, but I'll speak for me, Rabbi. And wearing these two sort of interesting hats where I approach things as a scholar critically, but I also approach them as a engaged Jew experientially. It just, we are going to interpret things based on how we see them today. And we couldn't, so when we say brothers and sisters, like, I know that the tradition didn't just mean brothers. I can't imagine that it just meant brothers. Why? Because people were created in the image of God, and it doesn't say men were created in the image of God. That's all my interpretation. That's my contemporary. But translation is interpretation.
Yeah, on this note, there's a wonderful scene in the history of the encounter of Christianity and Hinduism in the early 19th century in Bengal, where you are a very educated Hindu Brahmin who knows Sanskrit and Bengali, but he also picked up Hebrew, Greek, English, French, and he gets together with some Christian missionaries to produce the Bengali translation of the Bible. And he's interested in this project as he's kind of one of the first comparative religionists. He's kind of thinking about how the religions relate to one another. So he's sitting around with these guys, and there are two Protestant missionaries and him. And the Protestants are largely evangelical and quite committed to the idea that Hindus are heathen and they're perishing for want of the gospel and all that. They're committed to converting him. But as they're arguing over, I think it's the opening of John, and there's the procession of the Son from the Father, and then there's this Greek particle, or I guess the preposition dia. It could be through, or by, or whatever, and they get in an argument over how to render dia. And Ramon Roy was inclined to the Unitarians more than the Trinitarians. He felt like Islam and Unitarians had it right that God is one. And he was troubled by the Trinity. So he argued vociferously for a translation that suggested there was no room here for a tripartite deity. And he ended up converting the Baptist one of the Baptist missionaries to his position. And he became a Unitarian. And his name was William Adam, and he was forever known as the second fallen Adam. Amongst his Christian brethren, at least. Because imagine that, a Bengali Brahmin convincing this guy that he's got to read his own New Testament in a completely different way. Change his life forever. And of course, it cost him professionally and everything, because somebody else with his hours. So, yeah, it's interesting. But a lot rides on translation.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, by Unitarian, do you mean Unitarian with a capital U, a member of the movement that still exists today, or do you mean someone who believes this but not
So
necessarily?
it's actually, he was already writing letters to Unitarians at Harvard and in England, who died in Bristol in the home of the Unitarians. So he capital U.
Capital U, yeah, great.
Yeah. So he was more of a Unitarian with a small U because it had a probably a UUs today. Don't have any UUs here. I'm an Episcopalian who converted to Unitarianism. How bad is it to be a lapsed Unitarian? That's bad. I'll be lapsed from being, I don't know.
That's pretty lapsed.
Yeah, that is. And if I can, I don't mean to talk too much, but the whole translation thing turned the other way around. I was thinking even in prayer, which is kind of one of the elements of my handout. Prayer is a translation into a lot of traditions, and we have to then think about, for instance, Sid read shlokas from the Bhagavad Gita. We could ask ourselves, to what degree are those prayers? What constitutes prayer? Then you think of how Hinduism has come to be learned in the modern West. It's through a variety of, and I know this is dear to your heart, a variety of Christian categories, right? We use faith, sacrifice, grace, atonement, prayer, all these words that come out of the Christian tradition to make sense of a tradition. So atonement, this was one of the things the Christians felt proved that Hinduism was a flawed or insufficient religion, but it lacked a saving act of Jesus Christ. And everything else is that. Just like atonement gets used to talk about a variety of practices Hindus do to make up for sins that they committed. So ritualized. But it's a lot rides on the the other way, how we translate our Catholic words into these traditions. I'm sure we have a lot of examples of that. And Jennifer's whole work on the New Testament is kind of trying to undo a lot of this damage wrought by Catholic words.
I was gonna say, I feel like discussing like a lot of like interpretation nuances like with people, like I don't know, your friend or like other academics, like, or maybe I should just phrase my question like, I remember one time I was praying with my dad was praying with my grandma, and like instead of like putting his hands like this, when we were waiting to like bow, he like put his hands on the side, and like my grandma like screamed at him after, like that. Like, I've raised you all this time, I've never seen this, what is this about? And like, have you ever ran into like these things that like, I don't know, even within your family, or like really close friends that just because you think like, you guys are on the same page about something, like,
Sometimes in the Jewish community, we talk about there's two kinds of Jews. There's Jews who want to know about God, and then there's Jews who just want to know what God wants us to do. And so, you know, so for many people, spirituality is a much larger exploration that has looser boundaries to it. And but then there's lots of people who really want to, quote, do it the right way. And doing it the right way, what I would say, in deference to your grandmother, you know, like, is this becomes deeply important to people for other reasons, for other coded reasons. It's about a relationship with family, a relationship with her community. It's, you know, it's the comfortableness and rightness of tradition. And so then when people challenge that, they're not, it's not just where you put your hands, it's all the symbolic meaning that's connected to it. If your dad was, you know, like, I don't know, I don't presume to know the relationship between your father and your grandmother. You know, like in a perfect world, he would say, Mom, we are both on the same page in terms of our connection with God. God doesn't really care about what we put our hands in. That's what I'd say. I think if God cares about anything, she cares about butterflies. You know, like, that's what she's thinking about a lot. You know, and not what we, whether, I mean, I keep kosher, I find great meaning in keeping kosher. I don't think God gives a hang. That's not my theology. I don't think of a God who thinks about those things. I don't think of a God who thinks. Yeah.
I have one question I'd like to sort of pose in. So growing up as a Hindu, the mantras compared to I learned in Sanskrit. And one thing that at least is the case in Sanskrit mantras is that the mantra obviously has a translation, but it's more of a case of it has the translation it does because of what it is. And by that I mean the actual sounds that you make when you're speaking the Sanskrit are what give the mantra meaning. So in a sense, you can translate its meaning in a different language, and that's all well and good, but saying the mantra, say per se in English, will not do what it's intended to do because it's meant to be said in Sanskrit, the vibrations that are produced by the Sanskrit are what gives it meaning. I'm wondering, is that something that is, I guess you encounter in other faiths and traditions where you can translate it from the sacred language into the vernacular, but it only counts if you do it in the sacred language?
Well, I have my hand up on mantras, but you're asking me kind of comparative questions, so first maybe the other.
Let's do our things and then we'll, you know, like, I mean, and then
If you want, then we can explore this, as a way to think about that, because it starts with the Bija mantra, the root mantra of all the sleep mantra, Om, probably everyone knows. I just created a little handout that riffs on sort of mantras, because I think this is one of those translational areas where, I was thinking I did a quick survey of the Hinduism textbooks in my office, and prayer doesn't figure in the indexes of any of the books I pulled out.
Same with Greek religion.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just not there. Yeah. And yet, if you go online and Google Hindu prayer, you get 1,000 options for Hindu prayers. So Hindus are praying, and they're, in this day and age, they're aware that they're praying, but they're translating what it means to pray. And there are some siddhas left, but the Bhagavad Gita, the shlokas, their shlokas are kind of a verse one. There are stotras, there are bhajans, there are mantras, there are all kinds of verbal performances that Hindus do that we could call prayer. But we could, as comparative religions, I guess, spend a lot of time arguing what constitutes a prayer, properly speaking, right? And I think even well, let's just take out this. But I think speech theory, people say there's a denotative meaning and a connotative meaning, that speech can convey meaning, but speech can also accomplish an act. If I say fire, you all run out of the room, right? And it's a performance, a speech act. And so speech act theory works well with Hinduism because I think you're absolutely right, Samir. Hindus have this deep and long-standing tradition that to utter something is to make a reality. And Om is probably the quintessential mantra that I believe as a scholar that it has no meaning. It's a verbal utterance, but it was meant to be incredibly powerful. It brought reality into being. Now many Hindus will tell you it means Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, or it means, right? But those are interpretations, and like, you have that right, to interpret the text as well. So I gave you under Om there, I gave you the one of the more widely known mantras from the Vedic. So the Vedas are 1200 to 1000 BCE, the Gayatri mantra, which is known as the Brahmins or the Hindus' daily prayer. So for twice-born Hindus, this is something performed at least 3 times a day at twilight, morning and evening, and at noon. Right? It's a way to invoke the sun. So the Sanskrit is Om Bhurva Swaha, Samudra Prajna, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yona Prachodaya. And you have the transliteration down below the Roman script. You can see that. Now, what's the meaning of that? There are endless translations of this and endless commentaries on what it means and how it does what it does. And I think that one place to begin is kind of right where Samir began. What's at work here partly is there's a deep Vedic reverence for speech itself as powerful as it is. So I have a verse from the Rig Veda, O Lord of the Holy Word. Now this is a translation by Catholic Hindu. O Lord of the Holy Word, that was the first beginning of the word when the seers fell to naming each object. That which was best and purest deep within their hearts to reveal that love. So speech, kind of the naming of reality, brings reality into being. It's powerfully created. And you see that in the reference to the Gayatri section there. Whatever there is in this entire creation, clearly all of that is the Gayatri. All of that is the Gayatri mantra. It encompasses everything. And the Gayatri is speech itself. And then they love to do false etymologies. This is not really what Gayatri means, but for ancient India they heard, because when you sing Gayatri, then you say Gayatri to protect. So the Gayatri is both singing and protecting at the same time. It's some wonderful etymology going on. If you want a translation, it's further down here, because I think in some ways we begin at the point Samir did that. In some sense, just uttering this is to create a world, and then to inhabit the world through body, speech, and mind. Body. The Hindus speak of Kayo Manovakya, that is, there's the bodily, the mental, and the verbal components of worship. And in some sense, you integrate all of those and you achieve the kind of construction of a bottom page of concentrated reality. And this is Raimondo Panikar. It's wonderful, I recommend it to you. Yes, Spanish Catholic, but deeply interested in the Hindu tradition, trying to translate between the words. And so I'll just finish with this. The man of prayer, in and through his spiritual concentration, really concentrates more and more parts of reality. He condenses, as it were, the less concentrated sparks of the universe floating around him, so as to reduce them to their essence. He can do so because he has found the center of reality, which allows him really to concentrate, that is, to center his worlds in one single center. Again, that's a bit like Summit's interpretation of Judaism. This is Panikar's interpretation of Hinduism. That's not to say every Hindu would agree with that, but that's one interpretation of how speech creates a reality. So, But I think that's it's a perfect segue, thank you. And that's enough for me, so. But just to carry on, it's a mantra the same as a prayer. We recite a mantra that, because there's ritual theorists even argue over whether any of the many numerous Vedic mantras or any kind of Vedic mantras do they mean anything at all? Do they mean anything? One scholar compared them next to bird song. What does bird song mean? It's important, right? So it presses the limits of language in some sense. We want language to mean. Everyone who read the original text and then translated. We want to know what does that mean. But what if we just read the Quran? What if we just read the Bhagavad Gita and this was there? It would be different.
Well. Do you want to go next?
Am I answering this?
No, I'm not just. I mean, what should we do? Should we? You put out such great stuff. I don't know if, in a way, we should each give a small presentation and then bring it back for general discussion, or go with the discussion on the.
I'm just thinking of something I could riff on and
Yeah.
you can go off in entirely different ways.
Maybe we can have reflections about what you just went over, and we can move on to.
The idea would find connection to that. It makes any difference to you in how you think about language, speech.
Can I ask a question that kind of reflects on what we just talked about and moves into New Jersey? So when we had the different students come up and present, many of they all sang to some extent the holy text. It wasn't just like spoken. So I was just wondering, what do you think the importance of like melody and music is? Going back to your idea of like, it's being like a noise or a joyful noise or a prayerful noise instead of like actual words. So like, what are your reflections on that? How do you think that the text changes when it's spoken versus when it's sung?
I wrote 2 books on that. I do, of course, music and prayer in the Jewish tradition, and that's musicology course. Check it out. What year are you?
I'm a freshman.
Cool. Okay. Should take it this year. You have such a huge question. I mean, music does so many things for, was it St. Augustine who said singing prayers, or Augustine singing his prayer twice. And in the Jewish tradition, prayer has 2 aspects, keva and kavanah. Keva is the set liturgy of the prayer, and kavanah is the intention and direction and focus and personal meaning you bring to the words of the liturgy. And 2,000 years ago, the rabbis in the Talmud were saying that if you don't pray with kavanah, your prayer is not accepted. It's not even a prayer unless you put your heart and your mind and your soul into the words performed. So, Jewish prayer is the performance of sacred things, and music gives us a way to add so many layers of meaning to their performance, whether it's emotional meaning or communal connection or a way to remember the words. Why is it that I don't remember a single thing I learned in high school, but I remember every single song that was popular when I was in high school, and I can sing it to you with all the lyrics? Because music embeds text in our memory in a very deep way. So I could talk about this for several more weeks, but maybe my colleagues will like to.
We know that early Christians sing, but we don't have any of the songs until the medieval period. I don't really know, other than the fact that we know they sing, there's like Greeks and Romans and stuff, but we don't lack a lot of data from the practices of the earliest period of Christianity, which is the period of time that I work on. And so, yeah, I don't even know how to answer the question without evidence. We've lost so much of that, unfortunately.
Well, just to the gratitude on there, this, when you had it properly on there, it would be annotated with accent marks. Because the Vedic, unlike Sanskrit, Vedic was an accent language, and it was meant to be chanted at the second sort of corners. And one of the four Vedas is, in fact, the first Veda just set to music, basically. So, and it was revered as the highest form because it was all chanted. Chanting was the essence of speech in some sense. So, yeah, it's musicality. I mean, it might be stretching what we think about music to think about the chant, but it is kind of musical. I mean, that chant refers to it as a musicologist, and that must be. It is a form of music.
I agree.
The session kind of reminded me of something. There's so I guess in Hindu mantras, there's a class of mantras that are called Pratyangra mantras. I'm not sure if you're aware of it.
What was the
Pratyangra. Pratyangra is a form of Devi, and it's a class of mantras that are used as it's like they're counters. If someone is about to inflict harm on you, the Pratyangra mantra will counterattack to them. So because then they range in severity, they say there's some that was like very kind of basic levels, but there's some that some sort of Brahmins say are on the level of nuclear bombs. They can cause mass havoc if people use them incorrectly. So the way this knowledge is protected is some of the intonations you're saying, and sort of there is a performance, there's a way to say them, and that knowledge is very heavily guarded. Only a select few Brahmins know how to use them, and they will only teach it to people they need work. So in that sense, language is used as a barrier, sort of to keep certain aspects of the faith away from people who maybe shouldn't have them or sort of misuse them. And I'm wondering, I guess, your thoughts on that in other maybe Christianity views, other certain things like that, where language is a barrier instead of a method of dissemination.
It comes up in some strains of early Christianity, and if we go back to the letters of Paul, in his letters to the Corinthians, he claims to either be the person or know the person who was swept up into the heavens by God, to the third heaven. I guess his geography is three heavens, which is not uncommon. And when this person, maybe returned, he had experienced things that are unutterable, and that he can't reveal. And that, you're right, language can be used as a barrier sometimes, or the claim, whether he knew something or didn't, isn't really the point, it's the assertion that he knows something that creates the wall between inside and outside. So in a way, it's a practice of secrecy, in a sense, right? Yeah.
Well, I just say that language is always both creating boundaries and bridging boundaries. And Frederick Barclay said about this. So for every religious tradition that uses a sacred language, it's like, this is special, this is us, like you don't know it, we know it, and so that creates boundaries between you and other traditions. But once you know it, it becomes an amazingly powerful community building, tool. So that's languages transcending and bridging boundaries. But it's a good way to think about the power of language.
This can also happen just within the same religion, not who's in and who's outside the religion or the ethnic or whatever, but so in the 1960s, the Catholic Church had a Vatican Council, Vatican II, and in that long process, they decided that the Catholic Mass should be held worldwide in little languages. Prior to Vatican II, every Catholic Mass on earth everywhere had been held in Latin, regardless of the whole language. So you can imagine the separation between the priest who's empowered with this divine knowledge and this collection of divine texts, and every single person who comes to church, most of whom don't know Latin, have never had exposure to Latin except in church. But with the passage of Vatican II, the doors are thrown wide open. Now people can actually understand what's being said. So simultaneously something is lost and gained because the divine secret power of the language sort of dissipates, right? And the priest loses some authority because he can't be the gatekeeper anymore. And at the same time, this information and participation is actually opened up to everybody that's Catholic.
Yeah, two quick thoughts. Just one is that in Sanskrit there's a play on words that Shastra, that is authoritative knowledge, can be Shastra, which is a weapon. Knowledge can be a weapon. And that's kind of trotted out. But there's also this deep evidence of these kind of spells going back to the very earliest layers. And I think this is what led some Western scholars to develop a lot of this stuff, magic then. And again, we get into those translation issues. And then that allowed them to say Hinduism, erred on the side of becoming magic, or very superstitious, and then wasn't religion. So then that's where we're pressed by thinking about prayer like this, to think we need to broaden our conception of prayer to include what they would call spells and incantations, practices, equitable practices to deal away, or to even, you could send dropsy on your neighbor, or you can do things to your, because speech creates reality, right? So, yeah, very good, yeah, very good point. Dr. Gable was first.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you a comment that I said before about singing. So I can say, like, for Islam at least, recitation of the Quran has been something very fundamental to the religion and its practice ever since the Prophet Muhammad has used it. And then I could say, like, that in Islam it's more of a recitation instead of singing per se. So there are actually like special rules like called tajweed, where when you recite you have to put like different like stress on different syllables and also different vowels, putting lengths on different letters, but the style of the way you recite is also unique to every person. So reciting is also like it's also part of a cultural thing in Islam, like where there are like many reciters throughout the world with their own style. And you can have like Muslims today in the modern world also have access to like videos of different parties or different reciters, and it's a very common thing. Like you can step into a Muslim household and they could be playing a famous imam or leader of like a worldwide mosque, for example, reciting from a particular chapter, and it could be recited that they like to listen to. So I can say that it's a very major part of the religion. And there's also several verses that encourage the Muslims to recite the Quran in a slow, pleasant manner. But yeah, so recitation is very emphasized in the Islamic faith.
I was also gonna like when Rabbi Simon was talking about like singing as like helping your prayer get accepted. I know like in Islam, like beautification of your voice, it gives you more ajr, which is like more reward. Yeah. So like the more effort you put into your recitation, the more reward you reap from it.
There are also like Quran like competitions nowadays, like in the modern world. So basically, like kids or it could be adults, they participate in this tradition of memorizing Quran and memorizing it with their heart and letting that out in a competition of style. But this style has to be in a way that preserves these tajweed rules of language. So in this way that there's this flexibility in the way you recite, but there's also this rigidity in terms of the laws and the rules that you have to use when reciting. It's actually not recommended to recite without these rules as a way of respecting the sacred text.
When you brought it back to, if you think about Martin Luther and Protestant Reformation, and when he wrote his, I forget the number, 95 Theses, and posted them on the door of his church. They were written in Latin. And I think it's in Germany. But Latin was kind of an elite language only used by the clergy, not used by the laity. And the Protestant Reformation was pretty much sparked by someone translating the 95 Theses into the vernacular and spreading them throughout. So I never even thought of that, but like this translation has combined with the technology of the printing press has sparked this. He didn't intend it to be a revolution.
Intended to be that way.
But someone translated it and it became.
Right.
And I would just add, in the Jewish tradition, there's a sense that many contemporary Jews have that if they pray in English, it's not as authentic and valid as praying in Hebrew. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at Jewish liturgy, some of the most popular prayers are not in Hebrew, they're in Aramaic, which was the lingua franca of the day when it was the language that the historical Jesus, spoke. And because Jews there's Aramaic and Hebrew were related, but they're not the same. And so it's like, don't get so much on your high horse that vernacular is not valid because
That was a vernacular.
that was the vernacular.
To go over there, and something that I think is interesting about this intersection of language and religion is that languages are sort of inherently grounded in a specific geographic place, and how that the history of languages and the linguistic origins of the prayers that we use and the even vocabulary that we have to talk about religion comes inherently from some specific geographic place, and how do those connect? And also how then speakers, people who have Hebrew as their vernacular or their mother tongue or Arabic, how does that experience of growing up sort of with this holy language, but using it to talk about your day-to-day activities, and does that kind of impact the experience of religion?
Well, sometimes languages, what's that joke, what's the difference between a language and a dialect? A language is a dialect of an army, right? And you think of Latin and Sanskrit recently has been the subject of a lot of discussion about the Sanskrit cosmopolis that reigned across much of Asia, from Afghanistan to Bali, basically, so all across South and Southeast Asia. And it was the standard courtly language, the language for panegyrics, court inscriptions, and poetry and everything. And so it started somewhere, like you're saying, but then it had an empire, imperial kind of aspirations. So they were different from the Latin and Roman sort of imperial aspirations. It was more of a literary, cultural empire as opposed to a military empire. But it became the way kings thought about articulating their sovereignty, and poets thought about expressing. At some point, Buddhism goes from being a religion that communicates in the vernacular, because the Buddha had spoken vernacular himself, and he said, when you go forth to teach in the local languages, and at some point, Buddhists start writing in Sanskrit. Why? Because it had cachet as a courtly language, a language of authority and power. So, yeah, it raises really interesting questions about what makes prayer powerful, what makes sacred language powerful, what constitutes power.
Yeah, this makes me think of several years ago, I spent a summer studying Latin with the head Latinist of Vatican City. And his name was Reginald Foster. He's quite famous. He's absolutely fluent in spoken Latin. He speaks it all day long. And it was very intimidating. It was extremely abrasive. And he drinks wine at 9 a.m. We call it his breakfast of champions. And he was in this movie by, is it Elmar Religulous?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So he was being asked a question about Latin as a sacred language. And he was like, now he's the head Latinist of the Vatican, right? And he says, sacred language? Every prostitute in Rome spoke Latin. Right, all of these languages that we hold dear and imagine sacred, were actually colloquial languages. And so through time and distance, they become elevated because people stop speaking them, and they're preserved in text form. And then the people who are educated enough or empowered with the ability to interpret those texts, become a class unto themselves, and then in the language changes the way that people perceive it. And that's prestige.
And so that's fascinating. And a great example is the tremendous disjuncture that's happened in contemporary Israel on this when, Israel was in its establishment as a nation was one of the rare examples when an ancient language was revived as a contemporary language, very specifically, and poets, Yehuda Amichai, a famous Hebrew, modern Israeli poet, said, you cannot write a sentence in contemporary Hebrew without it having resonance to the Bible. You can't say, his famous quote was, you can't say, raise a knife, or hold a knife without it having resonance to the sacrifice of Isaac, because the words are all the same of the, from Genesis, to, to just how you say things in modern Hebrew. And it's, and so you just have to deal with that ancient contemporary disjuncture and influence, and it's both disconcerting and very wonderful at the same time, because you're connected linguistically to history in a whole different way. And I mentioned a lot of that is connected with Latin as well.
Yeah, there's an argument in modern South Asian studies. Someone made a provocative thesis called the death of Sanskrit thesis, that in the modern era Sanskrit dies, and it's largely because of European colonialism and the knowledge system, and Sanskrit can't compete at the level of innovative new learning. And it's batted back and forth and debated, but I do think there's some, I've written myself about this transition where Sanskrit goes to be something that's good to think with. People argue with it the way you can imagine rabbis arguing the Mishnah or something together with their texts and thinking about problems through it, to becoming something by the late 19th, early 20th century that's more of a fetish. And it's trotted out for reasons of authenticity, right? And then mantras have value not so much for what they mean, but just that they resonate with Indianness, right, and they represent. And of course, that's with aspirations for independence of the British and all that. But then today we're dealing maybe with the aftermath of Indian nationalism, where there's a kind of Hindu-ness that's inscribed into the language, and then the language is the property of one group that gets to claim, even if they're no longer really using the language for productive, innovative thought anymore, they're just using it as almost a stick to beat opponents with. So there's interesting ways language morph from being living, active things to being totally used or something.
I'd love to show you something just briefly about prayer and translation, but it's going to take me a moment to write it on the board. So people should continue talking. I'm going to take a moment and then I'll show it. Okay. Yeah.
What I want to ask is, do you think that a language is a colloquial language can in some ways become frozen in the same way that the Sacred language is? Because what I was thinking about, or what I have been thinking about, is so in 2010 or so, the church slightly changed the English translation of the Mass, or
The Catholic Church.
Yeah, the Catholic Mass. And what I remember from that is a lot of, and I was younger then, but a lot of adults just having a lot of hostility, even though this isn't the original Latin or anything, it's just and one English translation being switched out for a slightly different English translation of the same thing. There's a lot of hostility towards this, and I wonder if you have any thoughts on the way in which language is still colloquial and still used and also fetishized while it's still bad.
Or there's discomfort with the change in habit or something.
Yeah.
I don't know of any English-speaking Catholic churches who insist on having a Mass according to pre-2010 English. There are Catholic churches who insist on having Latin Mass, but I don't know. There's a lot of grumbling and discomfort with the change. but I would think that original version in English was, which also came out of Vatican II.
Yeah.
So it's only a couple of generations old.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember growing up in the Episcopal Church and changing the Book of Common Prayer and just languages around the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our trespasses, we can't forgive us our sins, right? So many people like can't why this changes, acceptable changes, trespasses, even though you're right, either one of them is the Jesus taught that prayer in the gospel, we do the Lord's Prayer. Yeah, but that's must be some Greek original there somewhere. Yeah. I mean, I think languages are prone to classicism, so there were pre-modern poets in Rajvasha or something who sang Krishna, and then that was their spoken language. But in time, performance of those over time, it's solidified, and then a couple centuries later, someone speaking that language anymore, the language is frozen in or almost form. It's still a deep meaning for people, but it's no longer living in the same way. Yeah, you're on.
Good, great. Okay, so I wanna this is fun. I love this because it just shows how complicated translation is. So okay, so the Hebrew prayer has the smallest unit of Hebrew prayer is called the bracha, or a blessing. Baruch, it's similar in Arabic and Hebrew, blessing, but and a bracha, a blessing. And every blessing begins with a formulaic set of words. And these are the set of words. And just let me say, usually for many Jews will not say the name of God except when they're making a blessing. One exception for that is if you're doing it l'shem hinuch, for the sake of education, then people will say it. So I'm going to say the holy names of God here for the sake of education. So I'm just covering myself here. So Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam. Every blessing begins like that, and then if you're doing a blessing over a thing, you then add at the end. So if you're going, so it's blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe. Okay. And then if you're making a blessing over bread, you say Hamotzi Lechem min haaretz, who brings forth bread from the earth, or Borei Pri Hagafen, who creates the fruit of the vine for wine. Or if you're starting a longer blessing, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, who has kept us alive and enabled us to experience this moment. You say that blessing at special occasions, and there's hundreds of blessings, and they all begin this way. And so most Jews who know this in translation sort of know that it means blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe. The problem is the Hebrew means so much different than that translation that it's hard to totally explain. So I just want to unpack it for a moment, what else is happening in the Hebrew at this time. So let's start with Baruch, translated as blessed. What does blessed mean? Just tell me in English, what does blessed mean? What do you think blessed means? Yeah.
It has received favor from God.
Great, okay, great. But although it's God who is the one who is blessed here, so I'm not disagreeing with you, it's just, what else does it mean, blessed? This is not a right or wrong, it's just your, reactions to it. Great, important, great.
Sort of going off what you said and kicking the can down the road. Blessed means to have received blessing. And what does blessing mean? I punt.
Okay, yeah. Kind of complicated. Great. Blessed. If something is blessed. Yeah.
Elevated?
Great. Elevated. Special. Unique. Holy. But then we have to say what's holy, which is really complicated. So in Hebrew, the word Baruch specifically comes from the the word for knees, barak. Barak means knee. Berkayim means knees. And Baruch is the stative form of like the gerund of being kneed. When I see something that makes me say Baruch, it's like this. You know, like I am knocked to my knees. I am laid down in front of it. That's what the need, you know, like Baruch. Atah, Hebrew doesn't have words like to and vu, you know, like formal, but atah is very much to in French. I'm speaking French here. I don't speak Spanish, but I know it's the same in Spanish, you know. And so atah is very easy, personal, masculine. It's masculine, you know. But if I want to say, hey, Daniel, you know, do you want to go down to the market? It's like that's the word I use. It's like, but so. Baruch, amazing, atah, real personal, simple, personal, connected, to, vu. Then, Adonai Eloheinu. Well, Adonai is written Yud, but Adonai is a code word for the 39-letter tetragrammaton, the holy, unpronounceable, unknowable name of God, i.e., which means if you understood the true power of holiness, you would understand the profound miracles of the universe. You know, in the stories of the golem, you know, that when the rabbis, the first Frankenstein stories, when the rabbis would make a figure out of clay and then make it live. If you've ever seen the stories of the golem, it's a whole legend, you know. And literally the Frankenstein story comes from the golem legend. The mystics would write, they would know the 39-letter name of God on a piece of paper. They would put it in this clay figure's mouth, and that would bring it to life. That's how powerful it was. On Yom Kippur, in the temple in Jerusalem, the holiest time of the year, the high priest would say that name once. It was only the high priest in the holiest time, in the holiest place, the Holy of Holies would say. So this is Adonai, but it's also supreme power, but Adonai is God in God's attribute of mercy. You know, so Adonai is about mercy, and it's feminine. Adonai is feminine. So, Eloheinu, Elohim, is God and God's aspect of judgment. You know, and it's masculine. So, masculine. And so anybody who says in the Jewish tradition that, oh, God is masculine in the Jewish tradition, wrong. God is masculine, God is feminine. God is not masculine or feminine. There are all these feminine names for God. You know, like God is often referred to as masculine, but God is often also referred to as the Shekinah, the feminine, all-encompassing, engulfing presence. When mercy is a feminine aspect, judgment, and this concept of Adonai Eloheinu is seen. There's a midrash, a story that says that the world only exists because God holds a rope. This is not meant to be literal. This is figurative, but the Holy One holds a rope, and on one side is mercy, and the other side is judgment. And if it's pulled too much towards mercy or too much towards judgment, the whole world will fall. You know, and anybody here who's been a camp counselor or a teacher or a parent, you know, like knows that that's all what it's about. You got to balance judgment and mercy, or a professor, you know, and or a resident counselor, you know. And this is the God here, mercy, judgment. And just to send in a personal thing, new means our, you know, so it's Elohim Shabbat, our God. Then Melech is really hard. Melech, it means king, but it comes from a time, we have no idea what, I mean, maybe for British you have some sense of what kingship means. In America, we have no idea what kingship means. This came from a time when the king had power over life and death, was the most powerful being in your cosmos. And God was referred to as Melech Malchei HaMelechim, the king of kings. So it was just a metaphor for how do we talk about power using a temporal, image of a king, and then sort of revving it up to the, to the nth degree. So it's ruler, melech, sovereign would probably be better. Ha'olam. Now, olam means world or the universe. And for years when I was a kid, it was just like melech ha'olam, God, the king of the universe. But olam means so much more. The way you say forever in Hebrew is la'olam, or la'olam ba'ed, to the world, to the universe. So a much better translation of this would be sovereign over time and space, because it has a spatial component and a temporal component at the same time. But also, the Hebrew root of this word, elam, olam, Hebrew is all built like Arabic on a three-letter root, system. Elam means mystery. So you also have a little push here to master of mysteries, like sovereign of mysteries. So you could say Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, and we translate it and we lose so much of what it's about. When you're dealing with the conceptual sense of the language, all of these other concepts and meanings are murdered. So that's just the word that I wanted to share.
Is gender assignment in Hebrew origin?
Is what?
Is gender assignment in Hebrew origin?
No. Hebrew is a gendered language, so atah is you, at is you feminine. Atem. The default pronoun is a masculine pronoun. So if I want to say everybody in this room, I say atem, which is masculine, but it's seen as inclusive of everybody. I don't write the tradition, I just teach the tradition.
What if you're talking about just like a chair or a table?
Chairs or tables have their own separate gender.
Okay, so.
It's like furniture.
Okay.
And they make no sense.
Right.
You have to memorize them. Yeah.
Are there other like dichotomies between the Abraham meanings, but like mercy as a feminine thing and like judgment as a masculine thing? Like, are there other sides to this world?
Yeah, well, in mysticism, in Jewish mysticism, there's a whole interplay between feminine and masculine qualities and realms of being. This is a longer discussion, but the masculine and feminine are seen as a way to talk about the nature of God in exile. And so the Sabbath, Shabbat, which starts in about an hour and a half, is seen as a time of spirit. Now, let me just say, traditional Judaism is a heteronormative tradition, so I got to say that out loud. For those of us who, are very engaged with queer theology and, and for whom non-heteronormative approaches to religion are very important, like me, one could just study the traditional practice and talk about it and then say Judaism has always been a tradition where progressive thinkers have added to it, well, not necessarily taking away, but the Sabbath in a traditional sense is seen when the feminine aspect of God that's been in exile, because of all the bad stuff happening in the world, is reunited with the masculine aspect of God, and there's some sense of harmony and completion and reunification and celebration. And that part of the concept of why the Sabbath is so special. I don't know if that answered your question or not. Yeah.
The question I have is the metaphor you gave of God holding the two ropes.
Yeah.
In that sense that it's sort of feminine and masculine have sort of, gotta be like a balance in between or something like that. Is there also a sense of, instead of being sort of dichotomously opposed to each other, sort of a sense of them being sort of complementary to other in the sense that one is not able to exist without the other, in addition to them both being sort of opposing people?
I like your, I like. What do you guys think? What does this remind you of?
This is great. There's such an extraordinary amount of tension between the images. And I have two questions. One, is this ever said in English? I know it in Hebrew, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Do people ever say it in English?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Not that
But when
much.
they say it in Hebrew, they're not thinking about all of this.
They're thinking formulaic. No, no.
Right, of course. So this made me think of the very beginning of the Gospel of John, which begins in English, in the beginning was the Word. It's a very famous statement.
Yeah.
You know, the word, okay.
Uh,
But in Greek, that word is logos. And the word logos in Greek, it can't mean word. It means so much more than word that our English translation doesn't even remotely come close to doing due diligence.
talk a little bit more about that. Like what?
Logos
I think
is like
about.
it's a root of our word logic, logical, logistical, and in Greek philosophy anyway, it's sort of like it's the faculty of reason. It's also the thing that it's gendered, and it's opposed to hule, which means materiality. So you have logic and reason, and if you can imagine, like here we're in a building, and we have the builders had the materials to make the building, and the wood and the nails and the windows and the lights. But what if you have no architectural plan? What are you going to do, right? So logos is the plan. It's the thing that gives structure to things. So in the beginning, NRK, a called logos, in the beginning was the logos, is to say actually that Christ was a faculty of God's mind that gave structure to the universe before the universe even existed, before time, and it's the most exalted genealogy for this figure of all the New Testament Gospels. All of that is lost by saying in the beginning was the Word, right? But this example, and the logos example, makes me think when I teach my classes, this is an inter-academic question, when I teach my classes, I'm always wondering, is this giving practicing Christians insight into what they ought to believe? Or am I doing the duty of a historian right now and just teaching my class, this is what ancient Christians would have heard,